Black woman jumped from a big ship to save his nephew. Everyone on deck froze. Powerful men in expensive suits stood paralyzed, their faces drained of color. Bodyguards reached for weapons instead of the child. J1, the most feared Mafia boss in Seoul, let out a sound that was barely human as he watched his maid Nephew plummet toward the water. Olivia was already moving. Her feet pounded against the deck, her maid's uniform billowing behind her as she sprinted toward the railing. She didn't hesitate. Didn't think about the height or the cold or the fact that she might die. She saw the boy hit the water far below, saw him disappear beneath the surface, and she jumped. The wind tore at her as she fell, stealing the breath from her lungs. The ocean rushed up to meet her with terrifying speed. She hit the water hard, the impact like slamming into concrete. Pain exploded through her body, and the cold shocked every nerve. Salt water flooded her nose and mouth as she plunged deep beneath the surface, the pressure squeezing her chest. Olivia forced her eyes open despite the burning sting. The water was murky, filled with shadows and bubbles from her impact. She couldn't see him. Panic clawed at her throat, but she fought it down, kicking hard to propel herself deeper. Where was he? Where was her boy? Then she saw it. A small hand, pale and limp, sinking slowly into the darkness below. Her heart lurched. She swam harder, her arms pulling desperately through the water, her lungs already screaming for air. The wet fabric of her uniform clung to her like weights, dragging her down, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Her fingers closed around his wrist, and she pulled him toward her. His body was completely limp, his eyes closed, his mouth slightly open.
No. No, no, no.
She wrapped one arm around his chest and kicked upward with everything she had. Her vision was starting to blur, dark spots dancing at the edges. Her lungs burned like fire. But she kept kicking, kept pulling them both toward the light above. They broke the surface together, and Olivia gasped, sucking in air like a drowning woman. Waves slapped against her face, filling her mouth with more salt water. She coughed violently, but kept the boy's head above water, holding him tight against her chest. He wasn't breathing. His lips were blue, his skin cold and pale. Above them, the yacht loomed like a massive white fortress. Voices screamed from the deck, but they sounded distant, distorted. Olivia's arms were already exhausted, her legs cramping from the effort of treading water in her soaked clothes. The ocean pulled at them, hungry and relentless. A rope ladder crashed into the water beside them, and then strong hands were grabbing her shoulders, pulling them both toward safety. Men in black suits hauled them up the side of the yacht, their faces grim and urgent. Olivia's fingers were numb, barely able to hold on, but she refused to let go of the boy. Even when they reached the deck, even when someone tried to take him from her arms, she held on. The moment her knees hit the deck, she laid him down flat and started chest compressions. Her training from years ago came flooding back, muscle memory taking over. 30 compressions. Tilt his head. 2 breaths.
Come on.
Come on, baby.
Breathe.
The crowd pressed in around them, but Olivia saw nothing except the child's face. She compressed his chest again and again, counting under her breath, refusing to stop. Water dribbled from his mouth. His chest didn't rise. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she pushed harder, breathed into his mouth again. Move aside. A man tried to pull her away, but she shook him off violently. No. The word tore from her throat, raw and fierce. She went back to compressions, her arms shaking with exhaustion but refusing to quit. She couldn't quit. Not on him. Never on him. Then suddenly, the boy coughed. Water spewed from his mouth as his body convulsed. He gasped, his eyes flying open, and he began to cry. The sound was the most beautiful thing Olivia had ever heard. Relief crashed over her so powerfully that she nearly collapsed. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the salt water still dripping from her hair. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Thank you. Overwhelming her completely. She pressed her face into his wet hair, breathing in the scent of him, feeling his heart beating against her chest.
Alive.
He was alive. A shadow fell over them, and Olivia looked up to find J1 standing there. The powerful, untouchable Mafia boss was on his knees beside them, his usually cold face twisted with emotion she had never seen before. His hands shook as he reached for his nephew, and when the boy turned to grab his uncle, J1 pulled him close with a desperation that was almost painful to witness. Over the child's head, J1's eyes met Olivia's. For the first time in the 3 years she had worked in his home, he truly saw her. Not as the invisible maid. Not as the woman who cleaned his floors and served his meals. He saw her as the person who had just saved the only thing in the world he truly loved. "You jumped," he said, his voice hoarse and broken. "You didn't even hesitate." Olivia said nothing. She couldn't speak past the emotion choking her throat. She simply sat there on the deck, soaked and shivering, watching the man she had served for years hold the child she had saved. The child she would have died for. The child who was so much more than anyone on this yacht knew. The yacht's medical bay was cramped and sterile, smelling of antiseptic and fear. Olivia sat on a narrow bench in the corner, wrapped in a rough blanket someone had thrown at her. No one had spoken to her since they'd brought the boy below deck. The ship's doctor worked quickly, checking the child's vitals, listening to his lungs, shining lights in his eyes. J1 stood over them like a sentinel, his face carved from stone, watching every movement with intense focus. "He'll be fine," the doctor finally announced, straightening up. No water in the lungs, surprisingly. She must have gotten him out within seconds of him going under. Quick response saved his life. The doctor glanced briefly at Olivia, then away, as if acknowledging her directly made him uncomfortable. J1 nodded curtly, then turned to look at the boy. The child lay small and pale against white sheets, his breathing steady but shallow. For several long minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds were the gentle rocking of the yacht and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then J1's eyes moved to Olivia in her corner. His expression was unreadable, but there was something different in the way he looked at her now. Not through her, as he always had before, but at her. Really seeing her for the first time. "Your nephew?" he asked, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. Olivia nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "You brought family to work?" There was no anger in his tone, only something that might have been confusion or perhaps respect. "I had no choice, sir," Olivia said quietly, finding her voice. "His mother, my sister, she passed away 2 months ago. There was no one else to care for him. I couldn't leave him alone at the servants' quarters, so I asked if he could come today. I was told it would be fine since we needed extra hands to serve." J1 was silent for a long moment, processing this information. "And you jumped off my yacht? From that height? For him?" "He's all I have left," Olivia said simply, her voice breaking slightly. "He's 8 years old. He's my responsibility now." Something shifted in J1's expression. He looked back at the sleeping child, then at Olivia again, and for the first time in 3 years of working in his home, she saw something almost human in his eyes. Not pity exactly, but understanding. Recognition of a bond he himself knew well. "What's his name?" "Daniel, sir." "Daniel." J1 repeated the name quietly, then nodded once. "The doctor says he needs to stay overnight for observation. We'll take him to Seoul Central Hospital. It's the best." "Sir, I can't afford." Olivia started, panic rising in her chest. "I didn't ask what you could afford." J1's voice was firm, but not harsh. "The boy nearly drowned on my yacht during my business meeting. I'll handle the medical expenses." Olivia stared at him, shocked. This was the man who had never once acknowledged her presence in 3 years. The man who walked past her daily, as if she were furniture. And now he was offering to pay for Daniel's hospital care? Before she could respond, the door burst open and Minacio swept in. Jaewon's girlfriend looked immaculate in a white designer dress and heels, her makeup perfect despite the chaos of the day. She took one look at the sleeping child, then at Jaewon's haggard face, and sighed dramatically. "Well, this ruined everything," Minacio said, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. "Everyone left. Your business partners are furious. Do you have any idea how much money you just lost because of this incident?" Jaewon's jaw tightened dangerously. "A child almost died." "The maid's nephew," Minacio corrected dismissively, waving her hand. "Not like it was anyone important. Honestly, why were servants' children even allowed on the yacht? This is exactly the kind of liability I warned you about." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jaewon stood slowly, his full height and presence suddenly filling the small space. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "Get out." Minacio blinked, her compact frozen halfway to her purse. "What?" "I said get out."
Now.
"Jaewon, you're being ridiculous." "I'm just being practical." "Out." The word cracked like a whip. "Go back to the car. Don't make me say it again." For a moment, Minacio looked like she might argue. Her eyes flicked to Olivia with pure venom, as if this was somehow her fault. Then she seemed to register the genuine fury in Jaewon's expression, and she left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor like gunshots. The silence she left behind was heavy and uncomfortable. Jaewon remained standing for a moment, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he sat back down heavily, rubbing his face with both hands. When he finally looked at Olivia again, there was exhaustion in his eyes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like shame. "I apologize for that," he said quietly. Olivia didn't know what to say. In 3 years, he had never apologized to her for anything. She had been invisible, beneath notice, not worthy of consideration. And now he was apologizing for his girlfriend's cruelty? "You don't need to apologize, sir," she managed. "Yes," he said firmly, "I do." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "How long have you worked for me?" 3 years, sir." 3 years. He said it slowly, as if the number surprised him. "And until today, I didn't even know your name." "Olivia, sir." "Olivia." He repeated it, and the name sounded strange coming from his mouth. Strange, and somehow more real than it had ever felt before. "And your nephew, Daniel. You've been raising him alone since your sister died?" "Yes, sir." "That's why you're always the first one up in the morning and the last one to sleep. Why you take on extra work." It wasn't a question, but a realization. "You're trying to earn more to support him." Olivia nodded, surprised he had noticed even that much. She hadn't thought he paid attention to the staff's schedules at all. Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, staring at the sleeping boy. "I lost my brother 5 years ago," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "He was everything good that I wasn't. When he died, he left behind a son. My nephew. The only family I have left that matters." Olivia's breath caught. She hadn't known this. The household staff gossiped about many things, but Jaewon's personal losses were never discussed. "So, I understand," Jaewon continued, still not looking at her. "What it means to be responsible for a child who lost their parent. The weight of it. The fear that you're not enough, that you can't give them what they need." Finally, he turned to face her. "And I understand why you jumped. Because when it's the only family you have left, there's no choice. You jump. You save them. Or you die trying." Tears burned at the corners of Olivia's eyes, but she blinked them back. This man, this cold, powerful, untouchable mafia boss, understood. In this moment, across the vast divide of their positions and lives, he actually understood. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, "for understanding. And for helping with the hospital." J1 nodded once, then stood. The ambulance should be here soon. I'll have my driver take you both to Seoul Central. I need to deal with the aftermath of today's disaster, but I'll make sure the hospital has my information for all expenses. Sir, you really don't have to. I do, he interrupted, and his voice was firm again, back to the commanding tone she was used to. But there was no coldness in it now. You saved a child's life today, Olivia. On my watch, during my meeting because of my enemies. The least I can do is make sure he gets the best care possible. He moved toward the door, then paused. When Daniel is cleared to leave the hospital, take a week off.
Paid.
Spend it with him. Make sure he recovers properly. Olivia stared at him, speechless. A week of paid leave? For a maid? That was unheard of in his household. Thank you, sir, she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. J1 nodded once more, then left the medical bay. Olivia sat there in the silence, looking at Daniel's sleeping face, and for the first time in 3 years of working in that cold mansion, she felt something shift. Something fundamental had changed today, though she couldn't quite name what it was. She didn't know that this was only the beginning, that the man who had finally learned her name would soon discover truths that would shatter everything he thought he knew. But for now, in this moment, she was simply grateful. Grateful that Daniel was alive. Grateful that someone had finally seen her as human. Grateful that she had jumped when it mattered most. Seoul Central Hospital gleamed with cold fluorescent lights and smelled of disinfectant and flowers. Daniel had been moved to a private room on the top floor, the kind reserved for wealthy patients and VIPs. Olivia sat in a chair beside his bed, still wearing her damp uniform under a hospital gown someone had given her. She hadn't left his side since they arrived. Daniel slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Olivia held his hand, her thumb tracing circles on his palm the way she used to when he was smaller, when her sister was still alive and life was simpler. The events of the day kept replaying in her mind. The gunshots.
The fall.
The cold water closing over her head. The terrifying moment when she thought she wouldn't find him in time. She had almost lost him. The realization hit her again and again, each time like a physical blow. If she had hesitated even 1 second longer, if she had frozen like everyone else, Daniel would be dead. Her sister's son. The only family she had left in this world. A soft knock on the door made her look up. A nurse entered with a tray of food, setting it on the rolling table beside the bed. You should eat something, the nurse said gently. The boy will need you strong when he wakes up. Olivia nodded, but didn't touch the food. Her stomach was still twisted in knots, her body still trembling with leftover adrenaline. The nurse left quietly, and silence settled over the room again, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. Hours passed. Night fell outside the window, the city lights of Seoul spreading out below like scattered diamonds. Olivia dozed fitfully in her chair, jerking awake at every small sound, her hand never leaving Daniel's. She woke fully when she heard his voice, small and scared in the darkness. Auntie. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Olivia leaned forward, brushing his hair back from his forehead. How do you feel? My chest hurts. And I'm cold. His eyes were wide and confused, trying to make sense of the strange room and the tubes attached to his arm. What happened? Where are we? We're in the hospital. You fell off the boat, remember? Into the water. Daniel's face crumpled, tears spilling down his cheeks. I was so scared. I couldn't breathe. The water was everywhere and I couldn't see, and I thought. His voice broke into sobs. Olivia climbed onto the bed beside him, carefully avoiding the foreline, and pulled him into her arms. He clung to her, his small body shaking with the force of his crying. Sure, it's okay. You're safe now. I've got you. I'll always have you. I thought I was going to die, Daniel whispered against her shoulder. I thought I'd never see you again. But you didn't die. You're here. You're alive. Olivia held him tighter, her own tears falling into his hair. And I will always come for you, Daniel. Always. No matter what. Do you understand? Even if I have to jump off 1,000 ships, I will always save you. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, both crying out the fear and relief and overwhelming emotion of the day. Eventually, Daniel's sobs quieted to hiccups, and then to steady breathing as exhaustion pulled him back toward sleep. Auntie, he murmured, his eyes already closing. You jumped off the big ship. For me. Of course I did. That was really high. I know. You could have died. But I didn't. We're both okay. She kissed the top of his head. Now sleep. You need to rest. I love you, Auntie Olivia. I love you too, baby. So much. Within minutes, he was asleep again. Olivia carefully extracted herself and returned to her chair, but she kept hold of his hand. She wouldn't let go. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Morning came with pale gray light filtering through the window. Olivia woke to find someone standing in the doorway. Her heart jumped before she recognized the figure.
J1.
He looked different than she'd ever seen him. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He held 2 cups of coffee and a bag that smelled like fresh pastries. I'm sorry, he said quietly, noting her startled expression. I didn't mean to scare you. I wanted to check on the boy. Olivia stood, suddenly self-conscious in her hospital gown and ruined uniform. Sir, you didn't have to come. I know you must be busy. I needed to see that he was okay. J1 stepped into the room, setting the coffee and food on a table by the window. How is he? Better. He woke up scared last night, but the doctors say he'll make a full recovery. We can probably go home in a day or 2. J1 nodded, moving closer to look at Daniel's sleeping face. Something soft crossed his features, something Olivia had never seen before. He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. They stood in silence for a moment, both watching the child sleep. Then J1 turned to her, and his expression became serious. I need to tell you something. About yesterday. The attack on the yacht. Olivia's stomach tightened. Sir? It was targeted. My enemies knew about the meeting. They wanted to send a message. His jaw clenched. What I'm saying is, it wasn't random. Your nephew is caught in the crossfire of my world. He almost died because of my life, my choices. It wasn't your fault. It was entirely my fault. J1 interrupted, his voice sharp with self-recrimination. I brought civilians onto that yacht. I put innocent people in danger.
You.
Him. The other staff. I was arrogant enough to think my security was perfect, that nothing could go wrong. He exhaled heavily. I was wrong, and a child nearly paid the price. Olivia didn't know what to say. She had never seen him like this, stripped of his usual cold confidence, genuinely shaken and vulnerable. I'm increasing security at the estate, J1 continued. And I'm implementing new protocols for staff safety. No one will be forced into dangerous situations again. You have my word. Thank you, sir. He nodded, then seemed to notice the untouched food tray from last night. You haven't eaten. I wasn't hungry. You need to eat. It was a command, but delivered gently. He picked up one of the coffee cups and held it out to her.
Please.
You can't take care of him if you collapse from exhaustion. Olivia took the coffee, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The warmth of the cup felt good in her cold hands. She took a sip, and the rich flavor hit her tongue, far better than anything she'd ever tasted in the servants' quarters. There's something else I need to say, J1 said, his eyes meeting hers directly. I need to apologize. Sir? For the last 3 years. For never seeing you. For treating you like you were invisible. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. You've worked in my home, cared for my things, and I never once acknowledged you as a person. I never asked your name, never noticed when you were sick or tired or struggling. I was cruel through indifference, and that's inexcusable. Olivia's throat tightened with emotion. You weren't cruel, sir. You had more important things.
No.
His voice was firm. There's no excuse. You're a person. You have value. You have a life and a family and dreams that matter just as much as anyone else's. And I should have seen that. I should have treated you with basic human decency. He took a breath.
I'm sorry, Olivia.
Truly. She stared at him, completely stunned. In all her years of working in wealthy homes, no employer had ever apologized to her. Ever. They ordered, they commanded, they sometimes thanked her for exceptional work. But apologize? Acknowledge their own failures? Never. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Jae-won glanced at Daniel again, then back at her. When you're ready to return to work, I'd like to discuss a change in your position. Fear shot through her. Sir, please, I need this job. I know I brought Daniel without proper permission, but I promise it won't happen again. Olivia, stop. He held up a hand. I'm not firing you. I'm offering you a promotion. She blinked.
A promotion.
My nephew, the one I told you about yesterday. He's 10 years old, and he needs a proper caretaker. Someone responsible, someone brave, someone who understands what it means to protect a child at all costs. Jae-won's expression was completely serious. I want you to be his nanny.
Full-time.
Better pay, better quarters, and Daniel can live with you in the estate. He'll be safe there, and you won't have to worry about childcare while you work. Olivia couldn't breathe. A nanny position meant better money, better treatment, better everything. And Daniel could stay with her, be safe, be cared for. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. Why? She asked, her voice shaking. Why would you do this for me? Jae-won was quiet for a long moment. Because yesterday, when everyone else froze, you acted. You saved a life without thinking about the cost to yourself. That kind of courage, that kind of heart is rare. And it's exactly what my nephew needs. He paused. It's what I should have valued from the beginning. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks before she could stop them. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much, sir. You have no idea what this means. You don't have to decide right now. Think about it. Take your week off with Daniel, let him recover, and we'll talk when you're ready. Jae-won moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Sir? Stop calling me sir when we're alone. My name is Jae-won. He smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. If you're going to be taking care of my nephew, we'll be seeing a lot of each other. We might as well be on first-name terms. And with that, he left. Olivia stood frozen in the middle of the hospital room, holding her coffee, trying to process everything that had just happened. Her life had changed in the span of 24 hours. She had jumped off a yacht, saved Daniel's life, and somehow, impossibly, caught the attention of the most powerful man she'd ever met. She looked down at Daniel's sleeping face, peaceful and innocent, and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, whatever this new position brought, she would do everything in her power to give him a better life. That was all that mattered. But as she sat back down in her chair, she couldn't shake the strange feeling in her chest. The way Jae-won had looked at her. The warmth in his voice when he'd told her to use his name. It was dangerous to feel anything for a man like him. Dangerous and foolish and completely impossible. So, why couldn't she stop thinking about the moment their fingers had touched over the coffee cup? Batch 4. Words 3001 to 4000. 2 weeks later, Olivia stood in her new quarters with Daniel, both of them staring in disbelief. The room was enormous compared to the tiny servant's space they'd shared before. 2 proper beds, a sitting area with a couch and television, a private bathroom with actual hot water, and windows that overlooked the estate's gardens. It was more than accommodation. It was a home. Is this really ours? Daniel whispered, his eyes wide as he took in every detail. He'd recovered fully from the yacht incident, though he still had nightmares about drowning. It's really ours, Olivia confirmed, setting down their few belongings. Everything they owned fit into 2 small bags. The new position as Minjun's nanny had transformed their lives overnight. Better pay, better quarters, and most importantly, Daniel could stay with her safely. But it also meant more contact with Jaewon, and that was becoming complicated in ways Olivia hadn't anticipated.
She saw him almost daily now.
He would check on Minjun, ask about the boys' progress, and somehow those brief conversations would stretch longer. He'd ask her opinion on things, seek her advice, look at her in ways that made her heart race and her palms sweat. It was dangerous. She knew it was dangerous, but she couldn't seem to stop it. One evening, 3 weeks into her new role, Jaewon appeared at her door, looking disheveled and exhausted. It was late, past 10, and both boys were asleep. He stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, his usual composure cracked. "Can I talk to you?" His voice was rough, strained. "Of course."
Come in.
Olivia gestured to the small sitting area, suddenly self-conscious in her simple nightclothes and robe. Jaewon sat heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "I ended it with Minessio. Officially. Tonight." Olivia's heart skipped.
Oh.
She didn't take it well. Threatened me, actually. Said she'd ruin my reputation, that she'd tell everyone I chose a maid over her. He laughed bitterly. As if that's not exactly what I did. Jaewon. I need to know if I made the right decision. He looked up at her, and his eyes were raw with uncertainty. She's connected. Her family has power. Breaking things off with her could cause problems for my organization. Political complications. Financial ones too. He exhaled heavily. But I couldn't stand being near her anymore. Not after what she said at the hospital. The way she looked at you, at Daniel. Like you were nothing. Olivia sat down carefully in the chair across from him. You want my honest opinion?
Please.
I think, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully, that you can't build a life with someone who doesn't share your values. Minessio showed you who she is. She cares about status and money and appearances. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but it's not who you are. Not really.
How do you know who I really am?
Jaewon asked, his eyes searching hers. You've known me for 3 years as the cold boss who never saw you. 3 weeks as something else. That's not enough time. I know you stayed at the hospital all night worrying about a child who wasn't even yours. I know you gave me this position because you valued courage over connections. I know you love your nephew enough to seek help for him instead of just sending him away like Minessio suggested. Olivia leaned forward. I know the man who broke down in that medical bay and apologized for 3 years of indifference is more real than the ice-cold Mafia boss everyone else sees. Jaewon stared at her for a long moment, something intense and unreadable in his expression. You see too much. Maybe you just hide less around me. Maybe. He was quiet again then. She called you a gold digger tonight. Said you probably planned the whole yacht incident to seduce me. That you jumped on purpose to make yourself look heroic. Anger flashed through Olivia. That's ridiculous. I nearly died. I know. I told her she was insane, and that's when things got ugly. Jaewon rubbed his face tiredly. But now I'm wondering if I let my emotions cloud my judgment. If I made a business decision based on personal feelings instead of strategy. Did you love her? Olivia asked quietly.
No.
I thought I did once, maybe. But no. It was convenient. Expected. She came from the right family, said the right things in public. He met Olivia's eyes. But she didn't jump off a yacht to save a child. She didn't stay up all night in a hospital waiting room. She didn't see people as human beings unless they were useful to her. Then you made the right decision, Olivia said firmly. Power and connections mean nothing if you have to become someone you hate to keep them. You'd have spent your whole life pretending, compromising pieces of yourself until nothing real was left. That's not strategy. That's slow death. Jae-won's expression softened. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I've just had to make a lot of hard choices with no good options. She smiled slightly. You learn to trust your gut when strategy fails you. My gut says I made the right choice. But my gut also says. He trailed off, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Never mind. Says what? Nothing. I should go. It's late. He stood abruptly, and Olivia had the distinct impression he was running from something. From her, maybe, or from whatever he'd been about to say. Jae-won. She stood too, taking a step closer. For what it's worth, I think Minasio was wrong for you. You deserve someone who sees you. Really sees you. All of you, not just the power and the money. And where would I find someone like that? His voice was low, almost intimate. I don't know, but she's out there. Olivia forced the words out even though they hurt to say, because they had to maintain these boundaries. She was his employee. He was her boss. Anything else was impossible. Jae-won held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. For listening. For the advice. For. He seemed to struggle with the words. For being honest with me. No one else is. Anytime. He left, and Olivia stood in the middle of her sitting room, her heart pounding. That had been too close. Too intimate. Too dangerous. She needed to be more careful. But 3 days later, Jae-won appeared again, this time with a formal expression and a strange tension in his shoulders. I need to ask you something, he said without preamble. And you can say no. I'll understand completely if you say no. Olivia's stomach tightened with anxiety. What is it? There's a family meeting next week. All the senior members of the organization. My mother, my uncle, the other family heads.
He paused.
I want you there. Olivia blinked. I'm sorry, what? I want you at the meeting. As my guest. Jae-won, I'm your employee. I'm your nephew's nanny. I don't belong at a Mafia family meeting. You belong wherever I say you belong. His voice was firm. Olivia, you saved a life. You gave me advice that helped me make one of the most important decisions of my life. You've done more for my family in a month than most of these people have done in years. I want them to meet you. I want them to see you. They'll eat me alive, Olivia said flatly. I'm a maid. A nobody. They'll see it as disrespectful that you even brought me. Let them. Jae-won's eyes flashed with something fierce. I'm tired of living by their rules, their expectations. I'm tired of pretending that birth and bloodlines matter more than character and courage. He stepped closer. Come to the meeting. Stand beside me. Show them that the old ways don't matter anymore. This is insane. Your family will never accept. I don't care if they accept it or not. I care what you think. I care about your opinion, your perspective, your presence. His voice dropped lower. Please, Olivia. I'm asking you. Will you come? She should say no. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to maintain the boundaries between them, to protect herself from the disaster this would inevitably become. But when she looked into his eyes and saw the vulnerability there, the genuine need for her support, she found herself nodding. Okay, I'll come. Thank you. The relief on his face was profound. The meeting is Saturday evening. Formal dress. I'll have something sent to your quarters. Jae-won, I can't accept. You're doing this as a favor to me. The least I can do is make sure you're appropriately dressed. He smiled slightly. Besides, if you're going to face down my family, you need armor. Consider it a tactical advantage. After he left, Olivia sat down heavily, her hands shaking. What had she just agreed to? Walking into a room full of dangerous, Powerful people who would see her as nothing but an upstart maid trying to rise above her station?
It was social suicide. Professional suicide, possibly.
But something in her refused to back down. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the way J1 had looked at her, like she mattered, like her presence actually meant something. Or maybe it was simply that she was tired of being invisible, of accepting that her place was always in the shadows. If he wanted her there, she would be there. Let them judge her. Let them sneer and mock. She had jumped off a yacht and saved a child's life. She had survived loss and poverty and 3 years of being treated like furniture. She could survive one night with J1's family. Saturday arrived far too quickly. The dress that arrived at Olivia's quarters took her breath away. Deep midnight blue. Elegant and understated, but clearly expensive. It fit perfectly, hugging her curves in ways that made her feel both powerful and vulnerable. Someone had also sent shoes, jewelry, and even a stylist who appeared at her door 2 hours before the meeting. Compliments of Mr. Kwan, the stylist said with a knowing smile. He wants you to look perfect tonight. Daniel watched with wide eyes as the stylist worked, transforming Olivia from a nanny into someone who might actually belong at a formal Mafia gathering. When she finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "Auntie, you look like a princess," Daniel breathed. "I look ridiculous," Olivia muttered, but even she had to admit the transformation was stunning. Minjun, who'd been watching quietly from the doorway, suddenly spoke. "You look beautiful, Miss Olivia. Uncle will be happy." It was the most he'd said in days, and it made Olivia's heart warm. But it also made her nervous. Even a 10-year-old could see something developing between her and J1. How long before everyone else saw it too? The meeting was held in the main house's formal dining room, a space Olivia had cleaned 100 times, but never entered as a guest. When she walked in on J1's arm, the room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned to stare at her. J1's mother sat at the head of the table, an elegant woman in her 60s with ice in her eyes. His uncle, a heavy-set man with a scar across his cheek, looked openly hostile. The others, various family members and organization leaders, ranged from curious to contemptuous. "What is this?" J1's mother asked, her voice sharp as a blade. "J1, why have you brought a servant to a family meeting?" "This is Olivia," J1 said calmly, leading her to an empty chair near his. "She's my guest tonight." "Your guest?" The uncle laughed harshly. "Have you lost your mind? She's your employee. This is inappropriate. She saved a child's life." J1 replied, his voice hard. "She has more courage in her little finger than most people in this room. I thought she deserved to be acknowledged for that." "By bringing her to a private family meeting?" His mother's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a charity event, J1. We discuss sensitive business here. She has no place." "I decide who has a place at my table," J1 interrupted coldly. "Olivia stays." The tension in the room was suffocating. Olivia wanted to disappear, to run back to her quarters and pretend this had never happened. But she forced herself to sit straight, to meet their hostile stares with quiet dignity. The meeting proceeded, though the atmosphere remained poisonous. They discussed territory disputes, revenue reports, and potential threats from rival organizations. Olivia tried to make herself small, invisible, but it was impossible. She could feel their eyes on her constantly, their judgment like physical weight. Then J1's mother struck. "So tell me, Olivia," she said with false sweetness. "What exactly are your intentions toward my son?" The room went silent. Olivia's heart hammered. "I'm sorry." "It's a simple question. You're here, dressed in expensive clothes my son provided, sitting at our family table. So, I'm asking what you want from him." "Mother," J1 started, but she cut him off with a gesture. "Let her answer." Olivia met the older woman's eyes directly. "I want nothing from him except to do my job well."
"I'm Yuna's nanny."
"That's all." "Is it?" The uncle leaned forward. Because it looks like you're positioning yourself for something more. Classic gold digger move. Save the kid, seduce the boss, secure your future. Anger flared hot in Olivia's chest. I jumped off a yacht to save a child because it was the right thing to do. Not for money. Not for position. Because he was drowning and I was the only one who moved. How convenient that it happened to be at a moment when everyone was watching. Another family member chimed in. Quite the performance. Are you suggesting I arranged for armed gunmen to attack the yacht? Olivia's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. That I somehow orchestrated a child falling overboard? That's insane. What's insane is my nephew bringing a maid to a family meeting and expecting us to treat her like an equal, the uncle snapped. She is an equal. J1's fist slammed on the table, making glasses rattle. More than equal. She has more integrity than half the people in this room. She doesn't lie. She doesn't scheme. She doesn't pretend to care about family while plotting how to increase her own power. J1 enough. His mother stood, her face flushed with anger. I don't know what spell this woman has cast on you, but you're embarrassing yourself. And us. Send her away.
Now. No.
Then we're leaving. His mother gestured to the others.
Come.
We'll reconvene when my son has regained his senses. Several family members stood to follow her. The uncle paused to lean close to Olivia, his breath hot on her ear. You're nothing. A nobody playing dress-up. When he gets tired of you, you'll be back scrubbing floors. If you're lucky. Olivia's hands clenched in her lap, but she said nothing. There was nothing to say. Then the dining room doors burst open. A man in an expensive suit strode in, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. He was perhaps 60, with silver hair and an aura of immense wealth and power. Olivia had never seen him before, but the way everyone in the room suddenly stood straighter told her he was important. Very important. The man's eyes scanned the room, passing over J1's family with disinterest. Then they landed on Olivia, and he froze. His face went white, then red, and his eyes filled with something that looked like shocked relief. It's you, he whispered, moving toward her. My God, it's really you. Everyone stared in confusion. Olivia's heart pounded. She didn't know this man. Why was he looking at her like that? And then he did something that made the entire room gasp. He bowed.
Deeply.
The kind of bow reserved for royalty, or the highest respect. We've been searching for you for years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Your father's company, his properties, his entire empire. It's all been waiting for his heir to come home. Olivia couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
I don't understand. Your father was Marcus Adeyemi, one of the wealthiest men in Africa. When he died 3 years ago, we've been trying to locate his only child, his daughter. The man straightened, looking at her with reverence. You disappeared 8 years ago after your family disowned you. We couldn't find you, but I knew your face from photographs. I've been carrying them with me for years, hoping. He trailed off, overcome. That's impossible, J1's mother said sharply. She's a maid. A nobody. She's an heiress, the man corrected firmly. Worth approximately $4 billion. Owner of Adeyemi Industries, which controls shipping, real estate, and technology sectors across 3 continents. He turned back to Olivia. Ms. Adeyemi, it's time to come home. To claim what's yours. The room erupted in chaos. Voices shouting, people demanding explanations, J1's mother's face purple with rage and humiliation.
But
the room erupted in chaos. Voices shouting, people demanding explanations, J1's mother's face purple with rage and humiliation. But Olivia heard none of it. Her mind was reeling, her heart racing so fast she thought she might faint. The billionaire man stepped closer, his expression gentle despite the chaos around them. Ms. Adeyemi, I'm Richard Chin, your father's business partner and the executor of his estate. I've been searching for you ever since he passed. When I heard there was a meeting here tonight with the Kwan family, I had to attend. We've been in negotiations with them for months about a major investment deal.
He paused.
I never imagined I'd find you here. Like this. Investment deal? Jae-won's uncle stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced with barely concealed panic. Mr. Chun, surely we can continue our discussion. Whatever personal matter this is. Personal matter? Chen's voice turned cold. This woman is the sole owner of Adeyemi Industries, the company that currently provides 60% of your family's operating capital. The company whose investment you've been begging for to expand your shipping operations. He looked around the room with disdain. And you've been treating her like garbage. Jae-won's mother swayed on her feet. 60% of our capital? Your son didn't tell you? Chun raised an eyebrow. The Kwan family is heavily leveraged. Without Adeyemi backing, you'd collapse within 6 months. We've been negotiating a $500 million investment to save your operations. He turned back to Olivia. Though I'm reconsidering that investment now, given how my partner's daughter has been treated. The room went deathly silent. Every face had gone pale. They had just humiliated, insulted, and threatened the one person who held their financial future in her hands. Olivia stood slowly, her legs shaking but her voice steady. There's something else you should know. She looked directly at Jae-won, her heart breaking. Daniel, the boy I saved from the yacht. He's not my nephew. Jae-won's eyes widened.
What?
He's my son. The words came out clear and strong. 8 years ago, I was 19 and studying abroad. I fell in love with someone my family didn't approve of. When I got pregnant, they gave me a choice: give up my baby or be disowned. I chose my son. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I left everything behind. My family, my inheritance, my name. I came to Korea with nothing but Daniel and started over. You told me he was your nephew, Jae-won said, his voice rough with emotion.
Elite.
I had to. Unwed mothers are judged harshly enough, without people knowing I gave up billions to keep my child. Olivia's voice strengthened. I worked as a maid because it was honest work that let me keep Daniel close. I scrubbed floors and took abuse and made myself invisible because it meant my son was safe and fed and loved. And I'd do it all again without hesitation. Chen's expression softened. Your father regretted disowning you. Every day until he died. He tried to find you, to apologize, to bring you home. But you disappeared too completely. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. He left you a letter. And everything else. The company, the properties, the investments. It's all yours. It's always been yours. Olivia took the envelope with trembling hands, but didn't open it. Not yet. Not here. Jae-won's mother stepped forward, her earlier hostility gone, replaced by naked fear. Ms. Adeyemi, please.
We didn't know.
If we had known who you were, you would have treated me differently, Olivia finished coldly. Because of my money, my status. Not because I'm a human being who deserves basic respect. She looked around the room at all their guilty, terrified faces. I saved a child's life on your yacht. I gave your son honest advice when he needed it. I cared for his nephew with everything I had. But none of that mattered to you, because I was just a maid. Please, the uncle said, actually wringing his hands. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But surely we can move past this. The investment deal is contingent on Ms. Adeyemi's approval, Chen interrupted. As I said, she owns the company now. Every decision goes through her. The uncle turned desperately to Olivia. We're begging you. Our family has debts, obligations. Without this investment, hundreds of people lose their jobs. Our entire operation could collapse. Please have mercy. Olivia looked at these powerful, dangerous people reduced to begging. Part of her wanted to walk away, to let them suffer the consequences of their cruelty. But she thought of Minjun, the quiet boy who'd finally started to heal. She thought of the household staff who'd been kind to her over the years, who would suffer if the family went bankrupt. And she thought of J1, standing silent by the table, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "I'll make you a deal," Olivia said finally. "I'll approve the investment. I'll save your family business. But on one condition." "Anything," J1's mother said quickly. "Name it." Dear reader, what do you think Olivia would request that would cost them money, yet still give them the freedom to choose between making the investment and going with her proposal instead? Would her request be something practical, something emotional, or perhaps a strategic move designed to test their priorities? Take a moment to consider what she might ask for and why it would put them in a position where they have to carefully weigh their options. Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.